Hello everyone, this presentation will be on skin disorders in children. The slides are made by the Indian Academy of Pediatrics and are available as a part of the 2015-16 IEP UG teaching modules. I have edited the slides a little bit to incorporate more photos to ensure that the diagnoses are easily understood. And before beginning the presentation, I would like to mention that the target audience for the presentation is at undergraduate medical students. The presentation focuses upon identifying the different skin disorders to help in coming at a diagnosis, and I have not touched upon the treatment aspect of any of the disorders which are mentioned. Now coming to the topic as such, it is an overlap between dermatology as well as pediatrics, and before going into the topic there are certain definitions which we should understand, where rash is defined as the totality of a skin lesion, and a lesion is defined as any localized or isolated skin pathology. And we define and classify lesions into primary, secondary or special forms. So when I refer to a primary lesion are those physical changes in the skin which are considered to be directly caused by a disease process, and these are rarely specific to a disease entity as a whole. Now when I refer to primary lesions are macule, papules, patches, plaque, nodules, tumors. They can also be vesicles, bullae, pustules, petechiae and purpurae. Now if you come to each of these individually, a macule is a circumscribed alteration in the color of the skin and it is flat. So visually to look at, a macule will be well circumscribed, discolored and flat. So over this lesion, if you were to close your eyes and run your finger across the surface, you would not be able to detect it. And secondly, if this particular lesion, that is a macule, is bigger than 1 centimeter, the same lesion is called as a patch instead. So a macule is smaller compared to a patch and both are flat lesions, as you can see in this diagram what is shown here. The smaller lesion can be considered as a macule, whereas this comparatively larger one can be defined as a patch. Now secondly, if you come to a papule, papules are superficial, elevated, solid lesions whose size is less than 0.5 centimeters in diameter, and most of the papules are elevated above the skin surface. So it is elevated above the skin surface and papules are palpable. An example of a dome-shaped papule can be a keratoacanthoma. A flat top papule is seen in lichen planus, or an umbilicated papule is seen in molluscum contagiosum. So these three examples are important, and I'll just zoom in on the diagram where you can make out that there is an elevation in the skin. So that elevation you can make out, and it is felt if you run your fingers over the lesion, and it is elevated well above the skin surface. Now coming to plaque, a plaque is a solid, raised, flat top lesion where the size is more than 2 centimeters in diameter. The size is important for a plaque, and it is analogous to the geological formation of the plateau. So to simply mention, in a plaque the horizontal diameter is more than the vertical diameter. So the horizontal diameter is greater than the vertical diameter, and plaques are seen in psoriasis, parapsoriasis as well as mycosis fungoides. Again, the examples are important. Now if you come to a nodule is a raised solid lesion more than 0.5 centimeters in size and generally is in the epidermis, dermis or subcutaneous tissue, examples of which are erythema nodosum, rheumatoid nodules and sarcoidosis. So as you see in this diagram, the plane occurs in the subcutaneous region and size is generally more than 0.5 centimeters. Now a tumor is a solid mass of proliferation of a particular tissue. It might be a normal or a pathological material, and it might be either inflammatory or non-inflammatory. We can further classify these into benign or malignant, but from a dermatological perspective, tumors need not always imply that the lesion is a neoplasm. This is purely from a skin perspective and it is not in a general site. So purely from the skin perspective, not all tumors are neoplastic. Now coming to vesicles and bulla, vesicles are less than 0.5 centimeters in size, whereas bullae are more than 0.5 centimeters in size and are well circumscribed, elevated, and superficial cavities which contain clear fluid. Now both vesicles and bulla have a transparent roof because it is very thin, and the underlying serum or blood in the cavity can be seen, and classical examples of vesicles and bullae include herpes simplex, herpes zoster, pemphigus vulgaris, Stevens-Johnson syndrome, and toxic epidermonecrolysis. So typically what you see here on the left side are vesicles, multiple lesions which are small, and size is less than 0.5 centimeters. Whereas in the image what you see on the right, a solitary lesion more than 0.5 centimeters, which is a bulla. Now coming to a pustule, pustules are circumscribed superficial cavities of the skin containing the purulent exudate. It might be either white, yellowish, reddish, greenish yellow, or hemorrhagic in color depending on the content, and it is commonly seen in folliculitis where it gets infected, or it might be sterile as in the case of pustular psoriasis. So if you notice here, this is a pustule. One point I would like to highlight, pustules are a common normal finding in newborn. A cluster of more than 10 pustules is significant for neonatal pustulosis to consider neonatal sepsis. Now petechiae are well circumscribed deposits of blood or blood pigments within the skin and or in the mucosal surface. The size generally is 1 to 2 millimeters and is generally associated with thrombocytopenia, platelet dysfunction, or local vascular abnormalities. And petechiae is generally a marker of coagulation dysfunction and is seen in viral fever such as dengue. So as you can see here, you can see multiple petechiae-like lesions. Now coming to purpura and ecchymosis, purpura are slightly larger hemorrhages, size to be defined as more than 3 mm, and is generally associated with the same conditions that are associated with petechiae, and often are secondary to trauma, vasculitis, or increased vascular fragility. So to put it in simple terms, a petechiae can evolve into purpura, and ecchymosis are larger than purpura also, and the size is generally 1 to 2 centimeters, and it's a result of subcutaneous hematomas. So in this image what you see here, this lesion what I am marking as 1 is ecchymosis, and what are seen here are as 2 are purpura. So both are seen in the same image, and palpable purpura is seen in one condition called HSP, which is an autoimmune condition, Henoch-Schlenn purpura, which has renal involvement secondary to autoimmune conditions. Now if you consider further larger ecchymosis, they are larger subcutaneous hematomas, and the hemoglobin is converted into bilirubin, which eventually gets converted into hemosiderin because of the biochemical changes. When in the hemoglobin state the color remains red to blue, which gradually gets converted to blue to green and eventually gets converted into gold brown due to the color changes in ecchymosis. Now sclerosis is a circumscribed diffuse hardening induration of the skin that is more easily felt than seen. It is a palpation finding and is characteristically seen in scleroderma. Now with that we have completed the primary lesions. Coming to the secondary lesions, these evolve from primary lesions and are generally seen because of external forces such as scratching, trauma, infection, or as a part of the natural healing process. But from a visual perspective, the distinction between a primary and secondary lesion is not always clear. Now, the secondary lesions, to just enumerate them, include scales, ulcers, crusts, scars, excoriations, keloids, fissures, and lichenifications. Now, coming to scales, scales are nothing but the flakes of the stratum corneum. They are large, membrane-like, minuscule or tiny, that is dust-like. They can also be described as bran-like, as pityriaciform, adherent or loose. So to describe scales, we can use any of these adjectives depending on the nature of the lesion. And generally, a rash that contains papules or nodules or plaques with scales collectively can be called as a papulosquamous disorder. So, in this image, characteristically what you can see is a scale formation. This generally comprises of a larger lesion, and if you do compare it with the initial description, what we see, it does comprise from the stratum corneum. It is somewhat larger. To an extent, you can call it as bran-like pityriaciform towards the edges, and initially the lesion is likely to have started with plaque. So, this also will come under a papulosquamous disorder. Now, coming to the crusts. Crusts are formed where the serum, blood or a purulent exudate dries over a skin surface, and it generally can be described as a thin, delicate, friable or a thick and adherent lesion. Now, in the initial formation, crusts will be yellow when formed from a dried serum, green or yellowish green when formed from purulent exudates, brown, dark red or black if formed from blood, depending upon how long it has been allowed to lie and how long the formation process has occurred. So, in this lesion you can see a yellowish green crustation. This yellowish green crustation is likely because of a pustulosis and is a result of a pus formation. Now, excoriations are breaks in the continuity of the skin which are caused by scratching or rubbing. Now, typically what you can see on the back, though it's not very clear in the image, you can make out the discontinuity likely because of scratching or rubbing. Now, fissures are nothing but linear cleavages of the skin, sharply defined by walls which extend into the dermis, and characteristically these are seen in congenital syphilis or athlete's foot. So, as you can see in this image, it is seen over the sole of the foot, over the Achilles region, and fissures are commonly seen here. Now, coming to ulcers. Ulcers, of course, from a surgical perspective are defined as a discontinuity in the epithelium. Ulcers are irregularly sized, may be regularly sized as well, may be regular or irregularly shaped, and from a dermatological perspective defined as an excavation in the skin extending into the dermis or even deeper. And the likely etiologies of it could be because of stasis, it could be because of trauma, it could also be because of tertiary syphilis. But one important point to note is that ulcers always heal with a scar formation. Now, coming to lichenification, it refers to an area of the skin characterized by an increased thickening of the skin with an increase in pigmentation as well as an exaggeration of the normal skin lines. It's generally because of chronic rubbing or scratching over a lesion, and the classical example for this is atopic dermatitis or psoriasis lesions which can become lichenified. Now, with this we come to the special lesions. The special lesions, of course, cannot be typically described as a primary or a secondary lesion because it has a few features mimicking both, in which we can, to enumerate these, include comedones, also known as blackheads, target lesions, milia, telangiectasia, burrows, and sclerosis. Now, coming to a comedone is a hair follicle infundibulum that is dilated and is plugged by keratin and lipids. These are generally seen in the seborrheic areas, and it can be classified further into a closed or an open comedone. A closed comedone is also called as a blackhead. A white comedone is also called, an open comedone is also called as a whitehead. And the typical examples of these are acne vulgaris and nevus comedonicus. If you come to target lesions, target lesion is typically described if it has three distinct zones with a central dark zone which is sometimes blistered, surrounded by a pale edematous zone, surrounded by a zone of erythema. And the typical example of this is erythema multiforme. Coming to milia, milia are small superficial cysts with an epidermal lining, and these commonly occur over the face, especially around the periorbital region, and is sometimes blistered or damaged skin. Milia is a normal finding in neonates. Now, coming to telangiectasia, these are the persistent dilatations over the capillaries in the superficial dermis, and these are visible as fine, bright, non-pulsatile red lines or net-like patterns in the skin. The typical examples of these are rosacea, ataxia telangiectasia. Now, if you go for the configuration of these skin lesions as a whole, whatever we saw were individual lesions. To piece it together, To describe it further shape-wise, we classify them into linear, annular or ring-shaped, round or coin-shaped, polycyclic, arcuate or figurate. Now, linear lesions, of course, as the name suggests, are linear, that is, it's evolved in a straight line. So, linear contact dermatitis, Koebner phenomenon, developmental linear lesions, linear vascular or linear lymphatic lesions of childhood or otherwise not specified. Now, Koebner phenomenon is seen in lichen planus, in active eczema, psoriasis, or in auto-inoculation because of verrucae or molluscum contagiosum. And developmental linear lesions are seen in epidermal nevi or in incontinentia pigmenti. The other vascular lesions which can be linear include thrombophlebitis, sporotrichosis or coccidiomycosis in immunocompromised children. Now coming to the annular and ring lesions, the annular or ring shape implies that the edge of the lesion differs from the center, which it means that the edge is either raised or scaly or both, or may differ in the coloration, such as granuloma annulare or in tinea or in erythema annulare centrifungum. Now, a round, nummular, discoid, coin-shaped lesion is sometimes round to oval-shaped with generally uniform morphology from the edges coming into the center, which is characteristically seen in plaque-type psoriasis or in discoid lupus, as you can see in this second image. Now, annular lesions can further be classified into granuloma annulare, erythema annulare centrifungum, erythema rheumatica, erythema chronicum migrans, erythema gyratum, or erythema multiforme. And typically these are seen in leprosy, dermatophytosis, tinea cercinata, psoriasis, bullous disease of childhood, lichen planus, or urticaria. Now, to consider a lesion as polycyclic or arcuate, a polycyclic lesion is generally formed by multiple circles or rings which are incomplete, such as in urticaria, or an arcuate lesion, which as the name suggests is arc-shaped because of an incomplete formation of an annular lesion. So the image 1 what you see here shows multiple lesions which are unable to coalesce, which is polycyclic in nature, and the second image is arcuate, that is arc-shaped. Now coming to the figurate erythemas, these include erythema multiforme, erythema annulare centrifungum, erythema annulare rheumatica, erythema chronicum migrans, erythema marginatum, and erythema gyratum repens. Now, the common presentation in childhood, what we see for rashes, of course, is fever with rash. And acutely ill children with fever with rash is sometimes a diagnostic challenge, and each lesion and each syndrome, each fever presents with a difficult description of these rashes. Now, a simple mnemonic to recollect this is very sick person must take double tablets. This has to do with the day of appearance of the rash in a febrile patient. V, very, stands for varicella, which implies that the rash appears on day 1. Sick for scarlet fever on day 2. P for person or pox, that is smallpox, on day 3. Must for measles on day 4. The first T stands for typhus on day 5. D, double for dengue on day 6. And the second T tablets is for typhoid on day 7. The only confusion might come in the T's, but always remember that first week investigating typhoid is difficult, so the rash will appear only after a week, that is on day 7. So to repeat the mnemonic, very sick person must take double tablets. Varicella on day 1, scarlet fever on day 2, pox, that is smallpox, on day 3, measles on day 4, typhus on day 5, dengue on day 6, and typhoid on day 7. Now, to further classify fever with rash, it can be centrally distributed maculopapular in nature, it could be peripheral eruptions, it could be confluent desquamative erythema, it could be vesiculobullous lesions, it could be urticarial, it could be nodular, it might be purpuric, or it might even be with ulcers or eschars. Now, the centrally distributed type is seen in measles, rubella, erythema infectiosum, in primary HIV, SLE, epidemic typhus, endemic typhus. It can even be seen in scrub typhus also, though characteristically scrub typhus will have an eschar. Leptospira, Lyme's disease and typhoid, all of these characteristically will get a centrally distributed maculopapular rash. Peripheral eruptions of course are seen in hand, foot, mouth disease, atypical measles, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, secondary syphilis, erythema multiforme, infective endocarditis and rat bite fever. The desquamative erythemas of course can be seen in scarlet fever, in Kawasaki's disease, and when mentioning Kawasaki disease I would also like to mention the new multisystem disorder which mimics Kawasaki in COVID. So that is of course the latest update which does mimic but will have a similar presentation of desquamative erythema. Streptococcal toxic shock syndrome, staphylococcal toxic shock syndrome, scarlet skin syndrome, exfoliative erythroderma syndrome and TEN, that is toxic epidermal necrolysis. Under this category, most of the conditions what are mentioned are acutely life-threatening and might often result in multi-system dysfunctions. So, the first image what you do see is typical scarlet fever picture. The second image what you see is a typical feature of streptococcal shock syndrome. And the third image what you see the child on a mechanical ventilator is toxic epidermal necrolysis. Now, Kawasaki disease and scarlet fever might come similar, the skin features are somewhat similar, but Kawasaki does have its own criteria and I'll be putting Kawasaki disease as a separate presentation. Now, coming to vesiculobullous lesions, it could be because of hand, foot, mouth disease, the staphylococcal shock syndrome, varicella, disseminated herpes, rickettsial pox or ecthyma gangrenosum. And urticaria eruptions are often the most benign of the lesions what we do get in a pediatric outpatient. Generally because of serum sickness, because of a drug intake, rarely because of a connective tissue disease, rarely idiopathic. But most common etiology for an urticarial eruption is because of introduction of a new food item. So, a typical presentation will be a child in the weaning age group between 9 months to 1 year or 1.5 years, where as a part of the weaning process they are introduced to a specific food item as a result of which the urticarial eruptions do come. And generally these are not life-threatening, but there are certain cases where the anaphylaxis or the serum sickness reactions are life-threatening also. Coming to the nodular eruptions, disseminated infections can present as nodules, rarely as erythema nodosum, Sweet syndrome or bacillary angiomatosis are again rare presentations. Both the images what are put up are those of Sweet syndrome. Of course, this one is in a more elderly person and this is more of the initial stage lesions over the extensor aspect of the forearm. Coming to the purpuric eruptions, purpuric eruptions of acute nature typically is associated with meningococci in acute meningococcemia, purpuric fulminans, chronic meningococcemia, disseminated gonococcal infections, viral hemorrhagic fevers, TTP, that is thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura, and enteroviral infections are other presentations of it. Finally, the final special lesion of course is the eschar, which I will be discussing, and eschar is almost always synonymous with scrub typhus, particularly in endemic regions, and it's also one of the important emerging arboviral disorders right now. Also associated with rickettsial spotted fever, rat bite fever, tularemia as well as anthrax. So it's important to always examine fever of unknown origin to look for an eschar, particularly because the eschar can be present pretty much anywhere. So with that I complete the discussion of the different presentations of the skin lesions, the different spectrum of the skin lesions as well as the classification of the skin lesions, as well as briefly about what lesions are associated with what conditions. This presentation, like I mentioned initially, does not touch upon any of the treatment aspects because the treatment for each condition itself varies, and the aim of this presentation was to sensitize the undergraduate student towards the spectrum of skin lesions in pediatric practice. I thank IAP for ensuring the slides are made available online, and I thank all of you for your patient listening. Please do join for the next video as well.